View is your favorite show, you might be a little slow.
Gutfeld talks about you all the time.
Who is he?
Next, Joy's gonna say she's never heard of carbs. Seriously, her denial of knowing me is as believable as her red hair.
Don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah. I mean, assuming she jogs. Oh, wait, there she is.
When Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher decide to join forces to roast The View, you know you're not just in for a casual critique, you're about to witness a comedic demolition job. We're talking about two heavyweight commentators from opposite ends of the political spectrum, but when it comes to mocking The View, they might as well be blood brothers on a mission. And let's be honest, when those two start swinging, even the teleprompter starts sweating.
Blackie could run for president and probably win. But there she goes again, playing the race card. She's more predictable than gas after a cheesy Gordita Supreme at Taco Bell. For someone named Sunny, she sure is cloudy.
Now, for those few lucky souls who've managed to avoid The View, here's the elevator pitch. A group of women gather around a table on daytime TV to discuss the hottest topics in politics and pop culture. In theory, it's a talk show. In practice, it's more like throwing a live mic into a Twitter argument and watching the chaos unfold in real time. Imagine a reality show set in a Starbucks where every customer thinks they're the main character. That's The View. At this point, going after The View is practically a hobby for Gutfeld. Like, forget stamp collecting or golf, Greg's idea of weekend fun is flipping on daytime TV, catching the latest chaos from that talk show panel, and absolutely lighting it up with the kind of commentary that makes their coffee curdle. It's become so routine, we could honestly schedule it.
With a lot of things that make me laugh every single day of my life, and you, little lady, are right up there with them. I'd love to have you on our show sometime. We'll even stock the green room with your favorite frozen mice.
The View says something ridiculous, which, let's be honest, happens more often than not. And Greg reacts with an eye roll so intense, it probably shifts the weather a little. And then, boom, the takedown begins.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now The View could ask Amir who's the dumbest one of all.
He doesn't just criticize, he demolishes with style. One of his favorite digs? That The View pretends to be a debate, when in reality, it's more like 5 people yelling over each other in the same key. Like a harmony of confusion, each one convinced they're the voice of reason. Greg once joked that watching The View feels like being stuck in a group project where no one read the book, but everyone still wants to give the final presentation. And honestly, he's not wrong. Greg's got this way of cutting through the nonsense with humor. That's just the right amount of petty. He's especially brutal with Joy Behar, calling her out for literally changing her opinion mid-sentence, like she's speedrunning her own revisionist history. And Sunny Hostin, Gutfeld says she debates like she's playing a game of I win because I say so. No logic needed, just attitude. And Whoopi? Oh, Greg treats Whoopi like a case study in morning show confusion. He said she talks like a philosopher who just woke up from a nap and forgot what the question was. That one stings because sometimes it's true. But the real kicker is Greg's take on The View's idea of inclusivity. He's called it about as warm and welcoming as a Siberian snowstorm, you know, all frosty smiles and frozen tolerance. His main gripe? The show pushes a narrative of diversity, but only if everyone thinks exactly the same. Step out of line and you're suddenly public enemy number 1. He calls it performance activism all show, no substance. Like a Broadway production, but with worse lighting and a lot more finger pointing. And Greg? He's not buying a single ticket. For Gutfeld, The View isn't just low-hanging fruit, it's the whole fruit basket just sitting there begging for a punchline. And lucky for us, he delivers every single time.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior.
All right, now let's talk about Bill Maher. The man who's practically built a whole lifestyle out of being that guy at the dinner table. The one who always disagrees. You know, the one who thrives on being a little too honest, a little too blunt, and always ready to take down sacred cows no matter where they stand. And when Bill Maher starts taking shots at The View, you know things have gone way beyond repair.
The far right, and I can't say it enough, I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay? That was a joke.
Too dark. Anyone, even his own side. But lately, even he's had to admit that the progressive parade has definitely hit a major pothole, and maybe, just maybe, driven off a cliff. So when you hear him ripping into The View, well, it's like seeing the last guy you'd expect to complain about the coffee start side-eyeing the barista. Something's definitely up. Maher's take on the show is something else, too. He doesn't just watch The View. No. He sees it like a fire drill where everyone's convinced the smoke is your fault. It's like they've created this reality where everyone else is to blame, and you're the one holding the burning bag of popcorn. When Maher starts referring to the show as tribal theater with coffee mugs, you just know he's over the whole thing. And here's the kicker, Gutfeld and Maher, two guys who usually wouldn't agree on whether the sky is blue or not, actually find themselves on the same page. Yeah, you heard that right. Two guys from totally different political universes both see the same thing when they look at The View. A comedy show, but a comedy show where the punchlines miss by a mile and the jokes think they're delivering world-changing truth. So now, Greg and Bill are both basically saying what we've all known for a while. The View has turned into some strange performance art. Every issue that comes up, treated like the end of the world. Every solution? A group hug with some expertly delivered jabs thrown in for good measure. There's no nuance, no real debate, just a lot of noise. And of course, the audience, they cheer like it's the finale of WWE, only the SmackDowns are with coffee mugs. But here's where it gets even juicier. Greg and Bill both nail it with one of the most hilarious observations. The View is now the one place where you better not have an opinion that doesn't match the crowd. The wrong opinion is like stepping into a hornet's nest. And if you don't believe it, just check how they all react when someone dares to question the right side of things. Greg's coined the perfect term for it, ideological theater. That pretty much sums up the whole vibe of the show. At this point, a performance where everyone is following the script, and heaven forbid you ad-lib. Bill Maher, with his classic wit, calls it a culty brunch with commercial breaks. And honestly, he couldn't be more spot on. The best part? The hosts of The View tried to clap back, but their attempts were, well, let's just say they landed like a glitter bomb on a grease fire. Flashy, defensive, and totally missing the mark. They didn't even try to address the real criticism. They dodged it like it was a dodgeball in gym class. But of course, the internet caught every awkward moment, and viewers on both sides of the political spectrum were left watching two people Gutfeld and Maher just laughing in sync. And let me tell you, that's rare these days.
Gutfeld talks about you all the time.
Who is he? Well, really, who is he?
I don't watch the show.
He has a show.
I don't watch the
never
show.
heard of him.
Yeah.
I guess he's just obsessed with me.
No. Next, Joy's gonna say she's never heard of carbs. Seriously, her denial of knowing me is as believable as her red hair. But obsession? I mean, come on, Joy. Where would you even get that idea?
Yikes. So Greg Gutfeld didn't hold back when he said it. The View isn't about debates anymore, it's about performances. He pointed out that it's not about finding truth, it's more like a race to see who can deliver the most emotionally charged monologue in under a minute. Like, forget having a real conversation, let's just see who can make the most dramatic point and win the crowd. That's the vibe now.
Well, I had a different question, but it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Yeah.
So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustice.
Maher hit the nail on the head when he said, The View View isn't about opinions anymore. It's about affirmations. You say the right thing and you get applause. But if you dare question the narrative, cue the crickets and a 1,000-yard stare. It's like a talent show where everyone's singing the same off-key song, and they're all judging each other for not clapping loud enough. Maher definitely echoed Gutfeld's sentiments, but he took it a step further. He said, "The View doesn't even have a round table anymore. Forget that image. Now it's more like a firing squad. And you better hope you're all aiming at the same target, because if you're not, well, you're the one getting shot down." It's not debate, it's not even a discussion. It's just people with opposite views trying to outshout each other. And that, my friend, is where it gets really awkward for The View. When you've got two loud critics from opposite ends of the political spectrum, both agreeing that something's off, it's time to take a good long look in the mirror, don't you think? Instead of pulling the misogyny card, maybe it's time to ask if the problem is the show itself. Gutfeld put it pretty plainly, saying, "The View used to be a chaotic, messy, but somewhat charming thing. Now, though," he said, "it's just messy and militant, and that's not a good combo." Maher, never one to mince words, took it even further. He said watching The View is like observing a therapy group where all the therapists forgot their training and just started shouting at each other with hashtags. You know, the kind of therapy where nobody actually listens, and it's just about who can shout the loudest. Sounds pretty familiar, right? But here's the kicker. The fans? Yeah, they didn't love it. Twitter X was ablaze like it had been hit with an overload of conspiracy theories. People were tweeting things like, "How dare Maher criticize a show for women?" and "Gutfeld's just bitter," or even, "They're both washed up." Classic. But here's where it gets interesting. The clips of Gutfeld and Maher roasting The View? They went viral. Like more views than The View itself gets in an entire week.
Motives stink worse than Joy Behar's job. I mean, assuming she jogs. Oh, wait, there she is.
The roast got clipped, memed and shared like it was a viral sensation, even amongst liberals. Gutfeld's lines popped up on late-night blogs with headlines like, "Fox host accidentally makes sense." It's like they couldn't ignore the truth, no matter how hard they tried. Now, you can be totally annoyed by Gutfeld's politics or Maher's sarcasm, but you can't deny it. Their message? It landed. And it wasn't even just about The View. It was about something much bigger. How we've allowed echo chambers to become comfort zones. How disagreement has turned into the ultimate taboo. Gutfeld and Maher weren't just taking shots. They were breaking that fourth wall. They were reminding us all that if everyone around you is always agreeing, you're not in a real conversation anymore. You're in a cult. And that's when The View, with all its flashy comebacks and coffee cup drama, started to feel kind of small. Like the set was too big for the ideas it was trying to hold. Because here's the thing, when you've got a Fox host and a liberal comic, two people who usually can't agree on anything, coming together to roast your credibility, it doesn't feel like an ambush. No, it feels more like an intervention. Seriously. Gutfeld and Maher may never ever see eye to eye on politics or policies or even whether pineapple belongs on pizza. But in that moment, they were united on one thing. The View has lost its way, and no matter how many staged outrage moments they pump out or how many virtue-signaling monologues they deliver, it's not going to fix that. Because when the sharpest critics of your show are actually funnier, more insightful, and more coherent than the people you've got sitting around the table, it might be time to take a step back. Lower the volume, raise the thought level. Maybe then they'll find their way back to something real. But here's the thing. Maybe it's too much to ask for any kind of nuance in a world where hot takes go bad faster than milk left out in the sun, and anything that asks you to think gets booed like a bad karaoke performance. But you know what? If there's one thing we can take away from that roast, it's this: the truth doesn't care about your ratings. And as for satire, it's got a better aim than anything The View has dished out in years. While The View keeps pushing its safe, groupthink-friendly lines, Maher and Gutfeld are out there doing what they do best, calling things out for what they are, laughing at the absurdity of it all, and reminding everyone that sanity isn't about politics. It's just rare. And if you think Gutfeld and Maher are done with their little roast sessions, think again. Because once you poke the bear, or in this case, a daytime talk show that's like a circle of self-righteousness on steroids, it's gonna poke back. But here's the thing, The View. You can't clap back at clarity. You can mock, deflect, try to twist things, but you can't unring the bell. Especially not when millions of people have already heard it. It's a show where the outsider gets corrected, lectured, and applauded until they just give up. Greg Gutfeld? He's been mocking this format for ages, calling it group therapy, hosted by people in denial. And Maher? He said it's like watching improv where everyone forgot the yes and rule and just keeps screaming, no, but actually, what they were doing wasn't just poking fun, it was illuminating something. Somewhere along the way, The View went from being curious to being completely certain. And in today's media world, certainty sells, but it also isolates. It's way easier to be loud than it is to be right. And it's way easier to shout someone down than to challenge yourself to think differently. For a show that's supposed to be about diverse voices, the irony isn't just thick, it's practically the main character. Gutfeld and Maher weren't just clowning around, they were diagnosing a shift in culture. Where opposing views used to spice up a conversation, now they're treated like toxins. One wrong word, and bam, you're labeled. Disagree with the crowd? You're dangerous. And let's not kid ourselves, The View isn't the only one doing this, but it's definitely the loudest, the most performative, and the most convinced of its own virtue. That's why the roast hit so hard. Because it wasn't just about the hosts, it was about the audience they've cultivated. You know, the people who clap, not because they actually learned something, but because their beliefs got confirmed. They're applauding slogans, not insights. Gutfeld and Maher essentially threw up their hands and asked, is this really the best we can do? A roundtable full of people who are more afraid of sharp ideas than sharp tones? Hosts who treat nuance like it's a virus? A stage that preaches open-mindedness but punishes anyone who dares to deviate? Maybe that's the brilliance of this roast. It wasn't venom. It was a mirror. And that mirror was held up by two men who, despite coming from completely different political sides, saw the same thing. The View is broken. And it's not just cringeworthy, it's counterproductive. Because when daytime TV becomes a parody of real intellectual discourse, what do you think happens to the audience? They don't get smarter, they just get louder. And the hosts? They don't become thought leaders, they become echo leaders. And the rest of us? Well, we're stuck watching yet another segment of indignation wrapped up as insight. And that's where it ends.